I'm just laughing at Tom Thibodeau being one of the absolute worst managers of a team I have ever seen. The Indiana Pacers beat the New York Knicks 130 to 121 to win game 4 of the Eastern Conference Finals. They head back to the Garden up 3-1 in great position. Not as great a position as OKC on the other side, but they are in great position to close out the series. I don't think they will. I think the Garden is going to make this game interesting still. You got to love the story of this game, which is, I'm sorry, the story is what it is. Tom Thibodeau is horrible as a rotational coach. He is horrible with all of his rotations and with all of his decisions and with all of his offensive coaching. Let's just talk about what he did real quick in this game, okay? Remember, 3 games ago, they made the bold, big decision. Tom Thibodeau, the bold, big decision to move Josh Hart to the bench. And since they've moved Josh Hart to the bench, he has logged more minutes in those 2 games coming off the bench, including this one, than he did the previous game before he went to the bench. Yeah, I'm not even kidding you guys. The previous game, before he went to the bench, he logged fewer minutes. When he was a starter, he logged fewer minutes than he did in the 2 games since he's been to the bench. Oh my goodness. Wow. Bold move by Tom Thibodeau, who still doesn't realize you can play more than 8 guys. Guys, I want to point out in this game alone, looking at the numbers real quick, Delon Wright was plus 11 on the court, played 9 minutes. That was Tom Thibodeau's decisions. Knicks' shot selection down the stretch, the last 5 minutes, that was the worst offensive display I've ever seen. We're going to get to the defense because the defense was horrible, and the defense stands out on its own too, but their shot selection was terrible. Let's not forget this. Karl-Anthony Towns, with about, I think, just over 4 minutes left, hits a 2-pointer to put the Knicks, to cut the Indiana lead to 115 to 109. He doesn't take an attempt the rest of the game. I get it's today's NBA. It's the modern NBA. You play around the perimeter and there's not as much inside-out basketball. But when you're the Knicks and you're a slower team and you got Tom Thibodeau as your coach, you would think that would be the type of team that plays inside-out with Karl-Anthony Towns, and he barely touched the ball the final 4 minutes. Now, again, there was a play where he got banged up halfway through that, where he banged up his knee and a call that was reversed in a foul. So you do have to give him a little bit of credit, a little bit of leeway there, because it is true that it's possible that they were a little bit more hesitant to go to him when the game was still somewhat within reach. But at the same time, if you couldn't go to him like that, put him on the bench. The Karl-Anthony Towns, Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges trio in the starting rotation doesn't work, and Thibodeau lives and dies with it. Rick Carlisle coach circles around him. I'm sorry. This game, people are going to give Indiana credit for this win. They're going to give Tyrese Haliburton credit, and I don't want to take anything away from Tyrese Haliburton. 32 points, 12 rebounds, 15 assists, a triple-double, a legitimate triple-double, by the way, and 4 steals, so played great across the board. Pascal Siakam comes in and drops 30 points. But the truth of the matter is, it was the horrible rotations by Tom Thibodeau that lost the Knicks this game, and why they are going back to the Garden down 3-1. Look, people are going to criticize some of the lineups, but Mikal Bridges was 4 of 5 from 3 at 17 points. Should have taken more, honestly. They seem to want to go a lot more with Jalen Brunson at some points, and he did have 31 points, not as efficient in this game, and then loved Josh Hart off the bench. Now, again, not knocking him, Josh Hart did have a double-double. He had 12 points and 11 rebounds. The problem was Thibodeau sticking with this lineup had the Knicks tired, and the Pacers are already a better transition team, and they were destroying the Knicks in transition, which is why their defense looked so bad. But you want to know why they were getting wrecked in transition? Because they wouldn't play inside out with Karl-Anthony Towns and go down low. This is the second time I've ever watched this happen, because I want to bring up a point that Karl-Anthony Towns did this. This happened to Karl-Anthony Towns. Here's what it reminds me of. Back when he was in college at Kentucky, I'm going all the way back to his Kentucky days, there was that infamous Kentucky upset loss to Wisconsin in the 2015 Final Four when Kentucky was undefeated the entire season. This was a team that had a collection of 5 stars from the year before that happened to return all of them, including the Harrison twins. They went undefeated the entire season in 2014, 2015. They go all the way to the Final Four. And Frank Kaminsky leads Wisconsin to an upset over Kentucky by dominating under the basket when Kentucky had Karl Anthony Towns. Why? Because John Calipari, who we all know in college basketball, is not a good coach and didn't know how to use Karl Anthony Towns. Thibs looked like that in this game. Okay, Thibs looked like he didn't know the advantage he had. And one of the reasons Indiana had such a transition game was because they weren't giving the ball to Karl Anthony Towns. I don't think he had more than 2 touches in the final 4 minutes of this game. It was absolutely ridiculous to watch. Okay, and Karl Anthony Towns, I've said this before, I've given him a lot more credit than most because I maintain that he was the reason more than anything for Minnesota upsetting Denver last year in the playoffs. I think he had a lot more to do with it than Anthony Edwards did. And there will be some questions about whether or not I'm being inconsistent because I'm criticizing Anthony Edwards specifically for the way he played last night and not Karl Anthony Towns. But again, Karl Anthony Towns is a big. Things have to go through him. And in this game, they didn't draw up plays for him. And then there was just horrible shot selection down the stretch. I mean, you saw at least back-to-back possessions where they jacked up threes, multiple threes, had offensive rebounds. The officiating was bad. It absolutely was. The Knicks had some of the worst officiating I had ever were victims of some of the worst officiating I'd ever seen. There was a sequence where they were called for 4 fouls. I think no, there were 4 fouls. They were called for 4 fouls, and 2 of them certainly weren't fouls. And then there was another sequence where they got back-to-back offensive rebounds, and there was a clear foul that wasn't called. The Knicks were a bigger victim of officiating in this game. Look, it's coaching and officiating that cost the Knicks this game. I'm sorry, Tyrese Halliburton. You played amazing. Major kudos to you. You are a clutch player. You are an incredible player. The Knicks as a team, though, 13 of 32 from 3. I'm sorry, the Pacers as a team, 13 of 32 from 3. The Knicks, 12 of 28. Not much worse. As a matter of fact, I think they were fine. I think they did a lot of things right that they should have done. At the end of the day, they just had a really bad rotation, a dumb rotation. It was a rotation that absolutely didn't make sense. And Thibodeau seems more like a coach built for the college game. Now, and I'm talking about the type of coach that develops players and coaches them up and all that stuff, not one that manages rosters and lineups. I mean, this was ridiculous. Okay, you had 8 guys log double-digit minutes. One of those was 11 minutes from Landry Shamet. So, like, you were horrible. Thibs was horrible again with his rotations, and there was talk of him doing this going into the game. Now, funny enough, throughout the first half, we thought he might actually change a little bit because he he played 10 guys in the first half. That was due to Karl Anthony Towns getting into early foul trouble, but it did happen. Cat, for the record, as I'm saying all this, finished with 24 points and 12 rebounds and should have had more. He was 8 of 15 from the field. They should have gone through him more, and they didn't. I don't understand why you don't go through a guy like Karl Anthony Towns. Tom Thibodeau lost this game, and because he lost this game, the Pacers are heading back to New York up 3-1 with a chance to close out this series. I firmly put this loss on Tom Thibodeau. Nobody else deserves more blame for the loss than Thibodeau. I'm just going to say that. Tom Thibodeau absolutely deserves all the blame for the loss.